Welcome to the Spaghetti Wall podcast, where we dive into life.
Both the messy parts and the moments of joy, and everything in between. I'm Jason Wilcox, licensed clinical social worker.
And I'm Dr. Thaen Saelee, a licensed clinical psychologist. Let's roll up our sleeves and get started.
Well, today we're going to talk about two important concepts that we conjure from our own mind that don't actually exist once you understand how they actually work. The two words are respect and failure.
Ooh, I think those words are activating words. People get caught up in it.
Well, let's start with one of them. Should we start with the respect?
Yeah.
The two places I normally hear it coming out when I'm doing counseling is with couples and parents.
Yeah. Say more.
So normally I hear couples saying it to their partner, saying that they don't respect me, and then they'll give a long list of reasons and examples of how the person's not respecting me. And then with parents, I hear the same kind of thing, right? They'll say, my kids aren't respecting me. They don't show me the respect I deserve. They're so disrespectful, any of those kind of words. And again, they'll give me a long list of behaviors and actions that the kid does that shows and demonstrates that they're lacking respect for this adult, this parent.
Or within couples, oh, my partner doesn't do this, so that means they don't respect me. Or if you don't do this, then you don't respect me.
The issue with this is what you're doing is you're making someone else's behavior, actions, words, you're making them personal. But if you understand how the brain really works, what's happening with the other person, their actions and their behaviors, it actually has to do with them. And the more you can see that it doesn't have to do with you, the more likely you're going to have a successful outcome or at least a more effective conversation.
Yeah, when you spiral down to they're being disrespectful, and then you turn that into an I statement is, I feel disrespected.
Which is going to heighten the conversation. It's going to aggravate it because the other person now is going to feel like you are making it about them when they don't feel that way. They might just be expressing themselves or dealing with their own emotions or trying to navigate the world around them in a way that they feel is the most effective. And it might not be the way that you want them to. And so as soon as you say, you're disrespecting me, what you did in that moment is you made it so anything happening is about you. So let's take a look at an example. Let's say a kid, you come up and you say, hey, I want you to get XYZ chore done, right? Go mow the lawn. Kid starts arguing with you about not wanting to do it. You say, you're disrespecting me. Right there, right then, what you do is you change the conversation. Prior to that, you were talking about an action, a behavior you wanted to see. As soon as you said you're disrespecting me, what you did is the argument is no longer about mowing the yard. The argument is about the relationship. So you've completely changed what's happening, which is going to normally heighten the argument. It's going to cause more of a rift, and it's going to make it so that no matter what, your engagement with this child isn't probably going to go anywhere effective any longer.
Yeah, when we explored that example, there's another point to take away in that sometimes in the parent-child dynamic, it does get sidelined, right? So the topic is about not doing the chore, but then the child might react and say, have an attitude, roll their eyes, use a curse word, say, I hate you, whatever the case. Then it becomes about the relationship, and the parent in this situation is missing that there is a reactivity that's coming up for the child that needs to be addressed, but maybe at another time.
And that's a great example because, again, if you take those behaviors you're listing there, Thaen, and make them that they become about you, again, it's going to increase the conflict. We want to look at them in regards to the behavior and the outcome of what's the expectation, what do we want to desire with this child, versus saying it's a disrespectful thing to you. Because once you do that, again, it's going to make it so it's personal, and it's going to enhance the conflict. It's going to create more divide.
Right. And I just want to pause for a second, Jason, and validate that, yes, you may be feeling a feeling there. And it's important to process that and talk about it and be introspective about it. We're not saying, okay, what you're feeling is not true. What you're feeling is wrong, what you're feeling doesn't exist. We're just pausing to go, let's look at this. In therapy, when this does come up for my individuals that I'm working with, usually, it keeps going down to a emotion of, I feel taken for granted. I feel alone. I feel like I don't matter. I feel exhausted, like I'm doing everything, right? So, like, it's important to kind of go downwards into our feelings and look at all the layers and not just sum it up to, well, I'm feeling disrespected.
Exactly. And it's really important what you're saying here. The reality is the brain, how it's operating is it's making it so that you experience it as disrespect. It's taking that emotion, that feeling that Tan was kind of talking about there. And when you feel those things, right, it's fueled by a negative core belief. Again, if you haven't heard our podcast episode on negative core beliefs, do check it out. It'll make more sense what we're talking about here. But you have a negative core belief. It gives you the experience that you don't matter, or the child isn't grateful for you. It starts creating those feelings and experiences, but that's internal to you. And so that's important to take responsibility. The feeling is yours, not put it on your child or not put it on your partner, because the second you say disrespect, it's just fueling and increasing that negative core belief. It's going to strengthen it.
Yeah, and in session, when these topics come up, Jason, I usually encourage folks to notice what's happening in their body. So immediately, nonverbally, you can see the jaws tightening, you can see the chest tightening, or the shoulders are, kind of bracing in this stance, or their hands might be clenching and their abs might be, embracing for an impact. And what this tells us is it does trigger, a nervous system response of, I'm not safe, something's happening, just something's unjust or unfair, and I'm becoming targeted, or I'm being taken advantage of, or I'm being mistreated. And so it's important to understand that, yes, something is happening for us. And when we work through it, and usually at the end of the session, it comes to connection, right? The connection is missing. And so these things are being felt, but then it's easier to just say, you're being disrespectful. You need to just respect me and listen. And that doesn't move connection, that doesn't enhance connection. And so when we are able to just see that it's not about respect, it's about something deeper. And the deeper thing is connection and being seen, and working towards a better way of communicating, being within that relationship or a family, the marriage. It helps move things along.
It does. What we're moving towards when we get away from it's disrespectful kind of mindset, and we deal with the deeper emotions and feelings that create that experience in the mind, we're trying to move away from that. We're moving into a place of empathy with accountability. It's understanding that the person, when they did whatever behavior it was, there's a reason behind it. They're experiencing something's going on in them. So we want to have empathy of understanding what's happening there, and also hold an accountability. So for example, if our partner all of a sudden starts raising their voice, even getting to a yelling state, what's happening inside of them is they might feel very dysregulated. They might be feeling their own negative core belief that's hurting and not feeling good inside. And so now they're having a reaction to it. If we know that that doesn't feel good for any of us and can cause a reaction, we might be able to have some empathy. But we also need to hold accountability of saying, hey, I'm going to need to stop this conversation if yelling continues. I'm going to have to step away. Right? We're going to have accountability with empathy, but we're going to steer away from the idea of saying you're disrespecting me right now. Well, let's move to the topic of failure then.
Yeah. It's not a good feeling to feel like you're failing.
And it's yet another thing that we conjure in our own mind that doesn't exist in the world. Now, a lot of people try to put it on things like you failed a test, you failed a class, you failed all these things. And it's important to look at what does failure actually mean that we're trying to say when people say failure, and recognizing that failure actually doesn't exist. You don't actually fail. One of the metaphors I give people often is think about a child, right? and this child, an infant, is starting to learn how to walk. Now, if this infant you're watching, and this is the first time they've ever taken a step, you can probably predict what's going to happen after they take the first step.
They fall.
They fall.
Mm-hmm.
It might be 1 or 2 steps, but they're going to go down. It's absolutely predictable. We know that's going to happen across the board. Is that failure?
No.
Right. So it's not failure. What it is it's the growing moment. It's the moment that this child learns what it is like to fall, what it is like to try to walk, to start building balance. It's an educational learning moment, not a failure. It's a moment that has to happen for the child to be able to walk ultimately.
Right. And using the same example, there are developmental milestones that children need to meet. And sometimes parents, they become very, very worried, and it creates anxiety when they go, oh, my son's 2 and isn't walking or talking or meeting these milestones. They're just milestones. It doesn't mean that if they're not there yet, they're failing or something's wrong.
Yeah, there's always that chance they might need some extra help with something. But it's only an acknowledgement of what is the current state of what is actually happening with the child or the person or yourself. It's just looking at, okay, where am I at currently with my skills, my abilities, my emotions, all of these things. And then how do I learn from this experience that normally someone might call failure, but that doesn't exist. So failure doesn't exist. All it is just a moment to understand, to learn, and grow.
Right. And the cognitive reframe here is that, right, there are requirements, there's checklists, there's not meeting the mark, right? And that's exactly what it is. You just didn't make it. You didn't meet the mark. You didn't get to this percentage. You didn't ace that test, right? So it is cognitively constructive thought.
Yeah. Again, if you take it back to the analogy of the child trying to walk, right? We have benchmarks. We know what we can expect while the child's trying to walk and get successful and good at it. We know that the first stage is the child's going to fall multiple times. That's going to happen. So anytime it's treated like a failure, we're going to get a different outcome with anything in life. If we treat a moment like that where we don't get the mark we're looking for or the mark someone else expects of us, and we see it as a failure, normally what's going to do is going to fuel any negative core beliefs. It's going to make emotions not feel good. And it's going to make it so our anxiety might go up, our depression might get worse. We might want to move away from whatever it is that's happening. It's going to make everything far more difficult versus if you can look at it as this was just a moment for me to learn. What all did I learn? How do I take my next steps?
And I can't help but do this in session when failure comes up with clients is to look at, again, what's beneath the feeling of failure. Oftentimes people report hopelessness, helplessness, feeling deflated, defeated. And these are good places to start instead of going, I'm a failure, right? Yeah, I just want to make note of that it's important to explore what's under that feeling of failure so that we can continue to process what's coming up and not focus on failure.
Exactly. We did another podcast with Mark Asper, who played pro football for a little while. And I loved one of the sayings he had on this topic. It wasn't failure necessarily. He called it losing. But he said that his coaches taught him there's only winning and learning. There isn't the losing. In other words, there isn't the failure. It's always, you in life, you are always winning or learning.
I love that. Thank you for the reminder. Yes, that if you guys haven't listened to that podcast, the legend Mark Asper gives really great advice around motivation, working through these hard times where things aren't working out, having to find your peace yourself and not fitting in a box, just doing your best, becoming the best version of yourself. I think that was what one of his coaches had told him.
Mm-hmm. But to get there, to be the best version of yourself, this concept we're offering you right now is recognizing that failure does not exist. Even people say this once in a while. They'll say, you only fail if you give up.
Mhm.
But that's not true either. Failure doesn't exist. Sometimes in life, changing course is the best thing you can do.
Yes, pivoting is okay. Deciding that something's not for you, that it doesn't fit you is okay, that it's not compatible, that it's okay.
Exactly. You know, there's a metaphor I give sometimes, and I talk to people in counseling when we're talking about this topic of just imagine you're on a hike, okay, and your goal is to get to the top of the mountain. And so when you start going down this path and you come along and you find out there's a bridge knocked out where you were going to cross a river, what do? And people will say, well, maybe I'll swim across, or maybe I'll hike up further, or I'll find another trail. Exactly. You can do any and all those things. And they'll say, well, maybe I'll try to swim. And I say, well, maybe the current's too strong, so you got to go back. Then what do? And then they say, well, maybe I'll find a different trail. Either way, if it's a failure, you're going to get stuck in this moment. If you see it as just a journey and there's an outcome you're looking for, then it's just pivoting. There's no failure here. It's learning in the moment, looking for what's the next path. How are you going to get the outcome you want? So if you can move away from these good, bad, right, wrong, and failure and start shifting to, okay, what is the outcome I want? And if I take this action or this behavior or go this direction, does it get the outcome I want? And if I did take this action or whatever it is I did and it didn't work, what do I learn from that to move to the outcome I want? And at any time, you can choose that's not the outcome you want anymore, and it's okay to change. I remember I used to want to be an actor and be in movies, and I don't have interest in that anymore. I changed. I pivoted. I love doing what I do now, and I'm so glad I did pivot.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that you failed as an actor, you know?
Right.
Yes. Coming back to emotions, right? So the failure leads us to feel disappointed, to feel like we're not good enough. And these are the things that are important to process and reflect on, is what's underneath the feeling of failure. I think the other thing is when people put that on us, when people say you failed, when people say, you are a failure because you didn't get this job, or you don't make this much money, or you didn't get married and have a family and a house and all this stuff. So, Jason, what do you say to that?
Well, again, it's looking at first and foremost, if they say that, it doesn't exist. If you can just translate that, when they say that, they just don't have the words or the concepts we're talking about here. So just translate it in your mind saying, they're just saying this is a learning moment. That's it. And then just look at it and go, okay, if they're saying whatever it is they're saying, what do I learn from this? And there would be one other extra step I'd actually add in there. If they're saying something like, oh, you didn't succeed enough in life with your career or something, you might want to look at if you have the same desire for the outcome. If you're not in line with that and that's not what you want, then what they're saying actually doesn't matter at all. There's no failure. This is just something inside of them feeling some kind of emotion inside of themselves they're projecting on you. For them feeling like they didn't succeed enough in life, so they push that onto you. And just recognize if you got the outcome you're looking for, or you're getting close, or you're still working on it, that's all just learning and growing and moving.
Yeah, you're still putting action, and you're still pursuing that life force. You haven't stopped doing that. You're moving forward with your life, whether or not you decide to have a career change, you decide to change your major, you decide to take a break from school. It doesn't mean you fail. A disarming statement might be, it sounds like I didn't meet your expectations.
Ooh, I love
Yeah.
it.
It's a reflection, it's naming it, and it's making it about them and their perception and their interpretation of how you're living your life. But really, it doesn't matter.
Right, because this is your journey. This is your hike up the mountain to the top. You get to decide which directions you want to go. You get to decide what the outcomes you want to be. And you get to learn from all the moments that you have great opportunities to learn. Remember, learning moments are critical for the next step of your life. If you don't have them, you don't make it to the next step.
Yeah, if you were perfect, then there's no growth happening. I had a client recently, she's a hula teacher, right? And
Nice.
she was wanting to go to this Merry Monarch thing that happens. It's the biggest event in Hawaii. And she's like, "Oh, okay. I would love to learn more and advance my skills." And so every year there's workshops that she attends. And every time she goes, she has this anxiety of going, "I'm going to fail. I'm going to look stupid," because, um, you know, naturally she's taking more advanced classes. So when she gets there, she's not going to know these moves. It's going to be hard for her to try this or try that. And what she was saying that she was able to work through was that the whole reason I'm going is because I don't know these things. The whole reason I'm going is to grow and to learn and to fail, quote unquote, at learning these moves. And when I'm there, there's people who's going to give me tips and techniques, and then I get better at it. And so when she embraced the fact that no one's going to judge her, when she goes there, the whole purpose of going there is to learn and to grow herself and her skills. It's not expected that when she gets there, she's going to be able to perform these new dances and these new moves.
And even if someone was going to judge her, right? If someone's going to judge you and you're worried about that, try to step back and recognize that's just something happening in them, because this is a learning opportunity. Like the example Thaen's giving here is just a learning opportunity to grow. If you look at anybody in their life, anybody that you look at and you're like, wow, they are so successful. Well, guess what? They started somewhere and they had lots of learning moments to get to where they're at. There's a famous story about Thomas Edison when he developed the modern filament, the light bulb. And I don't know exactly what he said, but the basic idea is a reporter came to him and said, "How do you feel about these hundreds of failures you had to be able to develop this?" And he said something along the lines of, I didn't have any failures. Those were all key moments to help me understand what the next step was. They were the key moments for him to get the outcome he wanted at the end.
Exactly. And these examples are everywhere in the creation of products, the creation of software, the creation of apps, the creation of even, like, oh, making the perfect fruit, right? Like people intersplicing certain types of fruits and growing them. It's not one that was awful tasting. It was just like, oh, it didn't grow and it didn't give us the crispiness of this cosmic apple that we want. Doesn't have the sweetness. Um, all those steps are necessary to bring you to a place of feeling content, feeling good, feeling satisfied, feeling like this feels right here. Maybe I think in a future episode, Jason, we can talk about perfectionism, because I think sometimes the thought spiral is that this is not perfect. I am not perfect, or I need to be perfect. I think it is definitely another section of failure that would probably be helpful for us to talk about.
I totally agree. And I totally knew that my beautiful gardening wife would bring up a food example just a moment ago with splicing apples and fruits together.
Yeah, of course. That's how they made the cosmic crisp.
That's right. Well, what's our take-home points?
Well, for mine is definitely deeper. Look deeper when you start to feel like you're being disrespected. Look deeper when you start to feel like you're failing, or that you may have a judgment, or other people are putting that judgment on you. For the first one of disrespect, I think really focusing on the relationship and the connection, that will move things forward instead of seeing what's not there and what's wrong. Yeah, I think that's my take home for both topics.
Yeah, I would agree that respect, failure, they don't actually exist. When your mind is saying there's disrespect or failure happening, that's your mind feeding a negative core belief. That's your mind dealing with an internal emotion that's happening inside of you. The more you can see that there isn't any disrespect happening and there isn't any failure happening, and you can see past those things, you're going to have far more success in life and you're going to feel a lot better.
Yeah, and I like to encourage listeners that, like, if you have a different take on this, comment, give us feedback. Like, a lot of these things that we are sharing are from our lived experience of working with folks over the last 15, 16 years. And these are tips and ways that we've been able to support people through it and that we've applied it to our own life in working with our children and working with colleagues and leaders and parents. And so if you have something different, please comment. Let us know how you feel about what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to The Spaghetti Wall. If today's episode stirred something in you, whether it was a fresh insight, a moment of reflection, or even just that feeling that you're not alone, you're right where you're supposed to be. Relationships are messy. So is healing, so is life. But that's where the magic happens. If you found this session helpful, consider sharing it with someone who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe for more real conversations about mental health, happiness, and how we keep going even when life gets tangled. Until next time, keep showing up, stay curious, and remember, the mess is the method.